Welcome to North TV's One-on-One with the Plainville Candidate Special in advance of the Monday, April 7th town election. Polls will open at 7 a.m. on Election Day and will close at 8 p.m. All precincts will once again this year vote at the Public Safety Building located at 194 South Street behind Town Hall. North TV will once again be your exclusive source for live election results beginning at 8:15 on election night right here on our Plainville channel, Comcast Channel 8. We'll also stream the results to watch on any device at plainville.northtv.net. There are no contested races this year, but a number of the candidates agreed to sit down with me to discuss their candidacy. Brian Kelly for Select Board, Patricia Bergevine for the Board of Assessors, Donald Fairbanks for a 2-year seat on the Board of Health, Stephen Albert for the Plainville School Committee, Justin Alexander also for the Plainville School Committee and Planning Board, and Alex Kenny as a write-in candidate for the Plainville Housing Authority. Here are those interviews. Brian, let me begin by asking, why are you a candidate? Third term, 3-year term on the Select Board.
Third term, absolutely. Yeah, looking to continue the good work that we've been putting in. The last time that I ran for re-election, it was all about keeping progress on track and keeping the team together. The last time I was up for election was right before we could really prove to the town that all the effort we had put in had finally paid off. And it was, just the fact that the election happens before the budget is finalized, and that was the first budget where we could really show that, we were back on track. We were putting plenty of money back in the savings account. We had plenty of services coming back, and we were kind of back from the cuts that we had to endure.
COVID was terrible, but it certainly helped. A lot of ARPA money came to cities and towns in Massachusetts and throughout the country. The Thermo Fisher Company moving into Plainville certainly helped as well. Would the town be in as good a financial position had not those two things occurred?
So I guess, from a COVID perspective and ARPA perspective, certainly that helped us to get through. That was at the same time that we were making those cuts, and part of what helped our town get through kind of feeling the full brunt of the cuts was that, the quasi-lockdown, people weren't using all the services they would have normally used. There weren't as many people out and about on a routine basis. Schools were remote, things like that. So some of the cuts that we had to endure weren't felt as harshly as they could have been had we not been in the midst of a pandemic. With respect to, the second?
Thermo Fisher.
Oh, Thermo Fisher, that's right, yeah. So
huge shot in the arm financially.
Right, well, so new growth, that's been kind of my mantra the whole time. If we don't want to have to talk about overrides or going into people's pockets, we need to think about other sources of revenue, and how do we do that? How do we make the best use of our existing commercial space? That's a thing I've been talking about for years. Thermo Fisher is just a great example of what can happen when you are, pro-business in the right areas of town to help foster that kind of new growth. And absolutely, that was transformative. There's another big project, the Cubes, that came in. That was another big shot in the arm. Not dissimilar from when the casino came to town, and we were able to put up a public safety office in Town Hall without having to come knocking on the door to the Joe taxpayer to help pay for this. We have a new project that came in, and you can allocate those funds to help improve the community.
Two things about new growth. The first is the fact that most people agree they welcome it, but most people don't want it in their backyard.
Yeah.
Was that the case with Thermo Fisher, and has Thermo Fisher been a good neighbor?
Yeah, Thermo Fisher's been a great neighbor, I think, to folks. I think everyone in that, all the abutters would agree. Any issue that they had through the planning process was addressed, and they've held up their end of the bargain and then some, I would say. when I say new growth in existing commercial spaces, I mean that's, I mean just that. I don't want to take farm, I say farmland, although we have one big project that happened in a farm that was in a commercial area. But you don't want to take conservation area, land or something like that and turn it in. But if there's a plot that's already commercial, it's already zoned that way, that's what everybody expects to go there. You just don't want to see that lot be vacant or have some defunct business there. You want it to be thriving. You want it to be additive to the community and to be, frankly, generating the revenue that it should be generating to help keep taxes down for residents.
You anticipated my next question, because my next question was going to be, is there enough commercial land available to provide the type of new growth Plainville needs?
Yeah, there's still several, and there's also the ability in some places to convert existing, commercial structures into new ones. And Plainville Square and that project that Jeff Kinney and his family and his company are going through right now is a great example of, looking at what's going on downtown. You've got existing commercial spaces, you've got existing, sewer and water tie-ins. The infrastructure is there. It's just that the buildings that were there and the businesses that were there were just not thriving. They were rolling over. And so, the plan is to put some beautiful new buildings there and install some businesses that will be thriving. It'll be a great place for folks to come in, and it's going to help to bring that tax base up.
I'm old enough to remember the Red Baron Lounge being there. Yeah, you're not. But
I am not, but I've heard it was a great place.
Oh, it was a great place. No doubt about it. What are you most proud of? You mentioned the finances and so on, but is there maybe one project or something you're most proud of?
Wow, to narrow it down to one thing is really tough. There's a lot of different aspects to being on the select board. I got onto the select board. I'm a finance guy by nature, and so, when I saw that, things were not going in the right direction, I wanted to go in and help to put them in the right direction. I'm super proud of that. I'm super proud that we were able to grow ourselves back out of, the hole that we were put in from a budget perspective. We had a lot of folks who we had to cut. We had a lot of people who left because of the cuts. I'm super proud of the team we've put in place. We've got great people across the board now. I'm super proud of the relationship that we've got with the finance committee and with the school committee and with the schools. Historically, there was always some headbutting that went along there, but I think going through those cuts was a wake-up call for everybody that we are a small town, we're all in this together, and we've got to figure out a way to fix this together, and we did, and it's been great to be a part of that.
Another 3 years, what do you see as the biggest challenges you and your fellow select board members will face over those 3 years?
Well, there's definitely challenges that we know of, and there's also the challenges we don't yet know. And that's the thing that I've learned, is that the second you think you've got it figured out, you'll find out you're wrong because there's something else coming up. No sooner did we want to declare victory that we've solved the budget issues. No sooner did that happen than there was going to be the need for a new water treatment facility, which gets the bids were getting more expensive, or the estimates were getting more expensive by the week. No sooner was it passed that there would be a new Tri-County high school built, and there would be an awfully big bill to the town of Plainville for that. And there's always going to be something like that. And so what I'm really happy about is the way that we've managed things over the past 6+ years, or 6 years in particular, to get ourselves in a position where we can weather those storms, where we do have money socked away, where we can set up special funds in order to cover the unforeseen, whether it's energy costs or rise in special education costs or things like that across the board.
Don't forget health insurance.
Yeah, health insurance,
especially this past year.
Yep, and just to be prepared for those things. So that's that's something that we're always looking to, and just wanting to be prepared for that, I think, is the most important thing, because that's what's going to erode all the work that you've done if you're not prepared for the unknown.
Do you think the average Plainville resident realizes and appreciates just how much work is put into what is a volunteer position? Because I go on social media, I shouldn't, I do, but there's never a lot of positives on social media.
So the answer is no, but it's when you do get that thank you from someone who appreciates it and understands what's going on, it kind of makes it all worth it. But at the same time, this is my home too. and we want it to be the best version, of Plainville that it can be. You know, some people moved out of town during the downturn and during the cuts, and some people thought about it, and it's like, do you run from the fight, or do you stay and fight? And we stayed and we fought and we won.
Final question. How important is it to have a good relationship with the other two members of the select board and the town administrator, Brian Noble? He seems like a great one.
Yeah, my fellow board members and our town administrator are all great. It's a great team. We go through some tough discussions, but we have fun doing it. And I think everybody is coming at issues from a different perspective, and we all appreciate that from one another. And so, yeah, it's been a great team, and I'm looking forward to 3 more years.
Brian, best of luck.
Thank you so much.
You go by Trish, but on the ballot you're Patricia, so that's what the graphic says. I have to ask, why are you running for another term on the Board of Assessors?
Well, I would have to say because there's nobody else running, and initially when I ran, I was asked to run after the gentleman we had in play had not been challenged for 29 years. So I feel, kind of a duty to support our town and do what needs to be done, which I think is great for all people to kind of give back.
It's nice to run unopposed because you're going to be elected, but at the same time, do you wish more people would step up and volunteer?
That is my biggest, 100%. It kind of starts out when, your children are young and they have all kinds of things they need to do. And, like always doing the carpooling and the snack bar duty and the CCD or whatever it is that you can contribute. I get very frustrated by that. I wish more people would step up.
For people who don't know, and I kind of know, but I'm sure I could learn a lot more, what exactly does the Board of Assessors do?
So what we do is the most important thing is we figure out based on our taxes that come into the town hall, what we can, set the tax rate. So that's super important, and that's always split between residential and commercial, and every town does it a little bit differently. Always trying to keep in mind that we want to make sure that we do what's best for the community with what we have collected. We also take care of all of your motor vehicle excise abatements, the elderly abatements, the veterans, the blind, and we just, we meet about once a month and we go through all of those items and we just approve them based on the rules of the state of Massachusetts.
I do know that in the Sun Chronicle every Saturday publishes recent house sales, and very important to look at the price of what homes are selling for in a community, because that eventually determines the value of your home and eventually how much you're going to pay in real estate taxes. Describe that, if you could, how that comes about.
Yeah, so, and that is absolutely correct. And it's funny, before I went on the board 6 years ago, I've been a real estate agent for 20 years. A lot of people I would meet with, and they would think that perhaps that their property value was that of what the town deemed their property value was. But that typically is about 2 years behind, and sometimes it's not done well, town to town. And most towns have an outside company that helps them do that because it's a lot of data. So if, for example, somebody isn't happy with the taxes that they have to pay, I believe the deadline is February 1st. You can fill out a form and send that in to say that you'd like an abatement. Same with commercial property. But for the most part, because it's been so outrageous, the increase in prices of everybody's home everywhere USA, when they see, what they could easily go and find out what their Zestimate is on Zillow without even talking to a realtor, they realize that they're doing okay. And a lot of those folks just cancel. They don't go any further. But that's John Groh's he has to go, if they are insistent, of course, then he goes out. And sometimes some of the data is inaccurate, and John can determine that and make an adjustment accordingly.
The select board ultimately decides on the tax rate for the next calendar year, not fiscal year. That's important to
Right,
note.
yeah.
Does the Board of Assessors make the recommendation on what's split between residential and commercial?
Absolutely. And John, our assessor, John Grow, he's incredible. And we always, he puts together all the data. Then we have a meeting and there's a recommendation. He puts together a whole presentation, and then he presents that to the select board. And typically, the one that's picked is the one in the middle, the one that makes the most sense. But he's very knowledgeable. He was, I believe, the assistant assessor in Milton. I believe it was Milton. He also has his real estate license. He doesn't really practice, but really smart guy and gets it done.
You mentioned he's a realtor, you're a realtor as well. How much does that help?
Well, it's interesting because before, and it was the last assessor that I was always going into the town hall to gather data. And so our former assessor, Maggie Clark, yes, she had asked me to run. So it kind of ties in, it's helpful, and it's because we're such a small town, less than 10,000 people. I've been there for 42 years. Most of the properties we're talking about, I know the house or the person, and it ties in. It's very helpful.
What is the current split between residential and commercial?
You know what?
Do you know?
I don't, but I could certainly, I don't remember, but I do have that.
It was a while ago.
Yeah, I will tell you that, and nobody's happy when their taxes go up.
God,
Of
no.
course, their taxes are going up because the property values are going up. But if you compare our tax rate to many of the surrounding towns, we're still one of the lowest.
That was going to be my next question. Running unopposed, you're probably going to get elected. That's safe to say, unless there's one hell of a write-in campaign. But anyway,
Which is okay.
What do you see as the biggest challenges in your next term?
It's definitely, the challenge for sure is that we don't see a lot of growth. We had Fisher Scientific, which was incredible, and then we had the casino years ago that helped, and so we don't see a lot of growth, unfortunately, because we're having a serious water problem, which you're probably aware of. Just like North Attleboro has their challenges. It seems like every town right now is having significant challenges. So that is going to be...
At least it's being addressed.
Yeah, but how long does it take?
Yeah.
I used to sell water and wastewater treatment equipment, so you have to go through all these hoops with EPA and DEP, and it's a timing thing. I mean, everything just is so challenging to get done in a timely fashion.
Final question. What do you want to leave people with as far as when they see your name on the ballot? What should they think about?
Well, I am running unopposed. I enjoy it. It's lovely. The other two board members, Shannon McCarthy and Pat Stewart, are incredible. Pat really puts together a lot of the information we need to get our meetings done, and everybody's lovely and cordial. John did have some goals, and there are only 4, and he was kind enough to send them to me. He has to do a lot of work. For example, he wants to get the FY26 interim year adjustments in early so that he can do the classification hearing early, inspect at least 20% of the real estate parcels over the course of the next year to make sure things are in line. Unfortunately, we have these crazy property values, which is great for the seller, not so good for the buyer. Meet or exceed department revenue requirements for valuation and timely delivery of reports, which he's done an incredible job. And of course, continue best practices, keeping outsourced work to a minimum, because we know we have these challenges in play with regards to lack of big projects going on to help our tax base.
Thank you so much for coming in,
you're-
and good luck in your next term.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Don, let me start by asking, why are you running for a 3-year term on the Board of Health?
So I saw the opportunity to get involved and help out my town. There was a vacancy on the board when the previous member, Dick Asian, resigned. I saw that as an opportunity to get involved and help out the town of Plainville, which I have lived in for my whole life and love. I grew up in North Attleboro, but I've had family in Plainville since the 70s, so we're very much entrenched in the town. And I love it. And I like it to keep its character, and I wanted to sort of start getting involved and help out as much as I can now that I'm a full-time resident.
I have to ask, is politics, and I don't consider Plainville Board of Health politics, but is serving in the public something that runs in the family?
Yeah, actually, my grandfather has served on a lot of boards in Plainville, and he's also a current Board of Health member. He's Bob Davis, he's on conservation, he's been on Board of Health, so he's been very heavily involved in the town for a long time, and I've always been inspired by that. I think public service is very important, so when I had this opportunity to get involved with the Board of Health, I wanted to take it.
Now, you and one other individual, Lou, are running unopposed, which is good news because you don't need to spend a lot on signs and things like that. But at the same time, I mean, you're young, you're getting involved in town government. Do you wish more people would step up?
I do, and I hope this can help inspire more people to get involved. It's not glamorous work, but it's important to have actual people doing what they can to work for the town and bring a sort of a common sense approach to town government, because we just need people. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of the same people crossing on every board, and there's a lot of duplication of efforts there, and I think it'd be good to have more and younger involvement in local government.
Why Board of Health?
It interests me. I have the background. My degree is in biology. I've always worked in science field. I've more recently worked in pharmaceutical manufacturing. So I think I have the technical expertise to understand the scientific issues underlying it, and I'm hoping that I can pick up the regulatory side of things. And I also have a lot of experience in heavily regulated industries, having worked in pharmaceutical industry for so long.
Have you learned anything about being a member of the Board of Health that you did not know or did not anticipate?
Yeah, it's interesting. The scope of it is a lot more expansive than I thought, and it does actually wield a lot of power, so there is a lot of responsibility that comes with the role, and I think it requires a very reasoned approach, and it requires members who are there to understand that they need to limit their own scope and not abuse the necessarily broad powers that the Board of Health has.
Now, the majority of people who live in a town like Plainville will never have anything in front of the Board of Health. For someone watching this who knows about the Board of Health but doesn't know what the Board of Health does, in a nutshell, what are the Board of Health's responsibilities?
So there are a lot of responsibilities. One of the largest parts is enforcement of the Clean Water Act and sort of everything associated with keeping the environment and water in. We approve wells, we approve septic systems, a lot of the zoning and stuff related to that. But then there's other stuff. The Board of Health representatives, they respond to complaints in town that are health related, and then the board is responsible for ruling on them and implementing any changes that are needed to respond to these. So, for example, we have. Recently, Board of Health members were going out to review the living conditions in one of the apartment complexes in town. There was a question about the efficacy of the heating system. And it's just things like that, just sort of looking for ways to make sure our health standards are met within town. What are other good examples? We have received a lot of complaints about outdoor smoking in certain areas. We review those. We assess whether additional regulations need to be put in place, what the impact is, and what we can do to help sort of protect public health without overreaching.
How much of it is dictated by state law?
A lot, and there's a lot of, we primarily focus on local ordinances, and there's the whole state law that supersedes a lot of it. But we're in charge of sort of implementing the state laws also.
How closely do you work, does the board work with the health agent?
The board and the health agent very closely. Deb's been incredible. She keeps that running, keeps our meetings very organized, and keeps the agenda tight so that we're able to get a lot of work done and address people's concerns in a pretty timely manner.
What do you foresee being the biggest issues, biggest challenges ahead as part of your 3-year term?
There are a lot. I think a lot of the job is finding the balance between enforcing regulations and also keeping the town serving its citizens. So we have a lot of things where we need to find a balance with our citizens. There have been lawsuits, there have been certain things that have come up. We always need to sort of find compromise and just working with individuals to help enforce regulations fairly in a way that protects public health.
I mentioned earlier that not enough people step up, and it's important to note, volunteer their time to serve their town like you are doing. Do you think the average person watching this has any idea just how much time you put in?
It's probably not, but there's a decent amount of work that goes into it. On paper, we only meet once a month, but we have other meetings we need to attend. Sometimes we do joint meetings with the select board. So there's a little more to it. And then there is a lot of sort of outside of meetings conversations, coming up with plans. We have a project we're working on right now where we want to implement body works regulations in town. Body works are sort of practices that fall outside the scope of traditional massage. So they're not falling within state regulations, but so a lot of businesses are opening to sort of utilize this unregulated niche in the industry. And we're working right now to implement some laws, and there have been a lot of sort of outside of meetings hours spent ironing out those new regulations, because it is a pretty expansive set of rules that we're looking to implement in the town to sort of fill that gap where we didn't previously have what we thought was enough regulation. But I've spent some time off hours working with the chief of police to sort of find a compromise within the regulations that we were proposing that would be fair for business owners, fair for residents, and also gave the town the teeth it needs to crack down on any businesses that were behaving unsafely.
On behalf of the residents of Plainville, thank you for stepping up and serving, and best of luck over the next 3 years.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Steve, why are you running for another term on the Plainville School Committee?
Well, Peter, I think there's so much more work to be done, so much more progress to be made. We've had a phenomenal 3 years. I can't believe 3 years have gone by already since you and I sat down and had this discussion when I was running for election the first time. But we've made progress, we've made change, positive change. We're in a period of sustainable growth now for the school committee and for the public schools. And the reaction of the parents and the kids has been phenomenal. I just came this morning from a band concert. Now, it was fabulous. The advanced band and the jam band. They're under the direction of Mr. Thurston, who is a new band leader for us. And when you and I talked before, 3 years ago, we didn't have a band. And one of the reasons I ran was because I saw the kids from the charter schools getting off the bus one day with their little cases for the band. And I thought it was so cute. And then it got me, because my kids wouldn't have the opportunity to experience a music program that way. And through cooperation with our town partners, through close consultation, and working together in a spirit of cooperation, really, we were able to bring that band program back. And it has made such an impact on the kids, on the parents. When you go to one of these concerts that they have, it's just packed, wall to wall. We have to set up, I even volunteer helping to set up more metal chairs just to get people a seat. And my own kids are in the band. I have a 14-year-old who's now at KP Middle School, and he is a clarinet player, and he wouldn't have been able to keep up at all at KP Middle School if he hadn't had the basic program in the Jackson and the Wood schools. So that's just an example of some of the growth that we've experienced. I wanted to be a rebuilder. I wanted to build bridges, and I think I've done that, but the relationships that I've formed and the connections that I've made, they require constant attention. There's only so much money to go around. And in the schools, it's our most important investment in the town because we're investing in our own future.
Absolutely. I don't think a lot of people know what the responsibility of a school committee is. Hiring a superintendent, approving a budget,
Yes.
and setting policies and
Right.
so on. That being said, in your 3 years, I believe you hired the current superintendent.
We did, right out of the gate.
Wise choice?
Very wise choice. We've got a brand new administrative team in place over the last 3 years. We started out hiring Dr. Jen Parson, and she's been phenomenal. I work with her on a regular basis. I see her every week because I go in and sign the bills, which is an important part of the responsibility. And she has brought a new spirit to the schools, and she's hired people to help her on the administrative team that have worked out very well. And it's a huge responsibility to choose the person that's going to set the course for the schools, and you have to have confidence in that person. And as a board, I think we made a very wise choice.
You mentioned there's still some things you would like to accomplish
Yes.
over the next 3 years. What are some of those things?
Well, you know, one of the things that I've thought about quite a bit is restoring a foreign language program to the primary schools. Right now, they don't get any foreign language until they hit the middle school because there is no program in place. It's one of the things that was cut back in the bad old days, if you will, when the budget was cut 17% across the board, and it was a bad time for the schools before I was on the school committee. So foreign language went to the wayside. And I've been lobbying, and I've been talking with the other members, and I've talked to town hall partners about ways we could possibly bring a pilot program back. I think foreign language is very important in the primary grades because science tells us that's when the brain is most able to absorb the ideas of a foreign language, to learn language. And when you have to wait till 8th grade or 7th grade to start, you're at a disadvantage. I didn't start until 9th grade. Back in high school was when the foreign language started, and I never was able to grasp it. 3 years of Spanish, and I can't do anything. So that's one of the things that I've worked on. And also to continue the close partnership that we have with the folks at Town Hall, to make sure the communication lines are always open, that we're always transparent. These are important things.
I know, and I attended a year-end event. Thermo Fisher employees were working with students and
Yes.
In an afternoon activity. It was absolutely wonderful. How can the school department do more of that with community partners?
Well, it's all about outreach, and it's all about having an open door policy. And I have to say the Thermo Fisher partnership is a model for how these things can work and be successful. I've been to their events where they come into the classroom, probably the same type of thing you're talking about. They come in and they do STEM activities with the kids, they do experiments, they do science on a real one-on-one level. I don't know who gets more out of it, the volunteers or the kids, to be honest, because they are so enthusiastic and they bring such a love of what they do to the classes. And I've had the pleasure of talking with Andy Dalton from Thermo Fisher, and he wants to continue that and expand upon it. And I think the attitude that you bring at an administrative level is the way you open those doors and keep them open. And in talking with some of the students, they look forward to these visits from Thermo Fisher. And one of the children, I said, "What do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be?" "I want to be a scientist. I want to be an engineer." And so this is where you plant the seeds that later on will bloom into such beautiful careers for these kids.
All of that takes money, of course.
Yes.
We are sitting in the North TV studio on Thursday, March 27th, and I believe the budget gap right now is about $800,000 that the Finance Committee is looking to close.
Right.
Unless more development, new money comes into town, that budget is going to get tighter and tighter every year. What does that mean to the schools?
It's a real challenge for the schools. I sit on the budget subcommittee, and we take a look at the macro environment, and we take a look at the micro environment, and we try to come up with ways of saving money but expanding programs. But what I found is it's no good to have grand ideas and put them in place for 1 year and then have to backtrack the following year. It's all about sustainability. And the new growth is a key to being able to have sustainability on programs. All of these things that we want to do, all of the programs we want to continue, we want to hire more reading teachers, we're bringing in tutors to try to keep kids off of special education that don't need to be in. They all require money. And it's a question of having the support of the parents who go to the town meeting and make sure that the schools are well cared for and well maintained. But it's a constant challenge to keep up with the stresses of town finance. I go to the finance committee meetings whenever I can. I attend the select board meetings. As I said, I'm on the budget subcommittee, so I have a keen view into what that situation is and how it changes day to day. But again, transparency, openness, communication. You can't be an island unto yourself. You have to work with other people and departments. Everybody has a need in a town, in a municipality. They all have their budgetary needs. And working with the town administrator, with the finance director, and with the finance committee, crucially important to making sure the schools are taken care of.
You are unopposed, and unless there is a write-in campaign that would be the greatest in the history of democracy, you will be serving another 3 years. That being said, do you wish more people would step up and get involved in local government?
It's always good to see people get involved. Unfortunately, sometimes the only time they get involved is when something's wrong or there's a crisis, and then you see a full room of people. And we've joked that our school committee meetings are sparsely attended. And I always say, well, that's a good sign, because that means nobody's mad. Nobody's carrying torches and pitchforks. And that's been the case in the past in many communities, where you'll get a room full of people engaged on a specific subject, but it's a negative subject, and they're upset. So running unopposed is, it's a unique situation, because you'd like to see more people actively involved in the town. There are no races in the town this whole election year. But at the same time, you have to take some sort of satisfaction in that the people are happy with the direction that we're moving in. And the school committee is a good team. It's a team effort, wonderful people on it, and they do a lot of hard work and put in a lot of time.
Steve, good luck over the next 3 years.
Thank you very much, Peter. It's great to see you again.
Justin, you are actually running for 2 seats. You're an incumbent on the school committee and on the planning board. Why are you a candidate again for both seats?
Some people would say I'm a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, there you
but
go.
Thank you for having me. No, that's not true at all, though. But no, I really love Plainville, and I think if you really love a town and you want to see it thrive, you got to be willing to give back. And I think the schools are a very important part of the town, where it's a draw of why people want to live here and move here. And I also have a daughter who's entering the elementary school, my younger one. My older one's going to high school. I can't believe it. And so I want to make sure that that she has what she needs, and what the teachers and they have what they need, and it's important. I watched my oldest daughter be in the elementary school when the cuts happened years ago, and it was painful to watch all those things get taken away. Trying really hard to not have that happen again, and that kind of dovetails right into planning board. Why planning board? Because if we can grow the town in a smart and sustainable way and provide revenue to the tax, to our the budget, and we can help keep the schools going, the town going, police, fire, town hall, the things that we need, and so they kind of work together, actually. So that's why I want to run for both, for re-election.
We'll focus on the school committee to start. Many people don't realize the authority of the school committee is limited to 3 things: hiring a superintendent, approving a budget to send to town meeting, and number 3, creating and approving policies for the schools. Do you agree with me that most people don't realize that you're limited to just those 3 things?
I think on a high level they don't realize that, but if you dive into those 3 things, they really affect everything. And so while we may not administer the budget, our job is to go get the budget. Superintendent will make a budget for us, and we'll present that, and we'll advocate for it. We saw each other at Finance Committee the other night, and that's what we have to do. But by getting the budget that the superintendent, the administration, the teachers need, they can do their job better. We may not have a day-to-day oversight of the schools, but without those resources, they can't do it. The policies we create and approve will regulate how the schools run, that superintendent and staff work within. So I think all those things work, that while we don't have day-to-day oversight of the schools, it is a very important role that the school committee has in steering the direction our schools do go in, and also what part they play in the town and the budget and how we're sustainable.
I was talking to Steve Albert as well, and he had come from a concert in the schools, and he said how great it was to have the music program back. As the budget gets tighter and tighter due to the limits of Proposition 2.5, how do you keep those programs alive?
It's a struggle. It's a struggle. You know, we just brought that program back. I don't think there's any desire from anybody in town to see something like the music or the band program in particular go away again. We have a wonderful teacher, Mr. Thurston, and we want to keep him. So it's a balancing act, providing that core education that the students need, dealing with our special education things, and keeping some of these programs that the town truly loves. And the only way we're going to do that is to work together as a town to decide our priorities. And we have to make sure that we can fund these things in a way that is sustainable. That's a word I use all the time, and I'll continue to use it. And that, do we want to keep these programs? Because it's real easy to say, do we need band? You know, well, you know, I think an honest person would be like, well, if you're going to focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic, to use an old phrase, no, but it's a part of our existence. It hurts our children when they go to the regional up at KP to not have that experience. They're so far behind their peers. So I would argue that, while maybe not technically necessary, it is very important, the band is, because I've watched the children get up there and not have that experience and feel behind, and it hurts them. And both in a performance ability and emotionally. It's hard for them to try to catch up. They're always frustrated. They're so far behind their Rentham and Norfolk peers. So I don't want to see it go away, particularly with band and any of the other programs, but we have to work hard to make sure we maintain them and those core services. I
mentioned hiring a superintendent during the term that's about to end. You hired Dr. Parson. Good choice?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, she's wonderful. And she didn't pay me to say that either. But no, she's wonderful. She really loves early elementary, that elementary age. It's where she started. It's her roots. So she was a great hire for us, and it's nice to have somebody who loves it. I'd like to believe that we're not going to be a stepping stone for her, and that she's going to stay with us until she retires. And if she watches this, stay here, Dr. Parson. We don't want you going anywhere. So, but yes, she's excellent.
The biggest expense on the school side, on the town side, is payroll, of course. People are living, employees are living in an age of inflation. Inflation is certainly more than 2.5%. Health insurance is going up more than the 2.5% limit. Taking a look at the planning board side of your responsibilities now, how can the planning board help the schools and help the town be able to keep up with those rising costs?
Well, that's the thing that a lot of people don't like to talk about. It's grow. You have to add things to bring in new tax revenue, or we have to pay for it ourselves without it. So we really have two choices. Well, three, I guess. You can cut, but you can only cut so far before we fall behind the services we expect from our town. And that's just a fact. We've experienced that already a few years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago now. The other side of it is you can grow. And if you grow, that helps the bottom line, it helps the budget, it helps our services, it helps us be sustainable in an inflationary budget. Like, everything costs more now. The other thing we can do is we can pass an override, which I'm not advocating for. I'm not saying we're doing that, but that's the other option. So if we don't want to grow,
Mansfield is,
Yeah.
Easton is,
Absolutely.
Franklin is.
Exactly. And if we're in a position where we want to keep these services, we don't have the new growth, then we have to do an override. So we have to make a choice. We either grow so we don't have to do an override, or we say we don't want to grow, but we all have to be willing to stand up and pay the extra to cover what we're not willing to let the town grow to cover. And that's a hard thing that people don't like to talk about, but it's something that we all have to have that. And the planning board plays the role by trying to push off that override need to grow the town in a smart way that makes sense, and keeping the character of the west side of town, growing in the areas that are appropriate, like Route 1, that Route 1 corridor, the 106 and 152, although the traffic's an issue, I know, but We're working on that. North Attleboro has a project that may come to fruition that could affect that area, but grow where we can grow and grow smartly and try to take care of our residents through that growth and try to push off the need for an override as much as possible.
Plainville had 2 failed overrides, and detractors of those overrides said, see, everything was fine, but a lot of that had to do with Thermo Fisher coming into town and other businesses coming into town. One would say more businesses like that are needed, maybe not on that large a scale. The question is there enough land in Plainville to do that?
So we got lucky with Thermo Fisher on a couple of the other projects because that was the override.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. That money that came in just after the cuts, a year or two after the cuts, was the equivalent of an override to fix the town. But that'll only carry us so far. Eventually, the costs of doing business, unfortunately, are higher than the 2.5% increase we can do per year for our taxes, and it catches up with you. And again, you can only cut so much. So you either grow to offset it or an override, and it always comes back to those two things. There is land. We have the land off of Belcher-Madison Street down just on the other side of 495, which people keep saying is going to be a market basket. We'll see. I'd love to see it come. There's a warehouse going in there. There's the land next to the Peach Store on Route 1. There's the potential for the Heather Hill project, which is a big housing development, but that's a substantial amount of money to the tax base that could help really push the need for an override off. So there is places to grow in town, and hopefully in ways that our residents won't be impacted too much by.
Well, what happened to, and I'm showing my age here, the old Plainville Drive-In? I know there were plans for that.
It was.
Has that been tabled, so to speak?
So it was originally approved for a multiple building, like office type environment, office park, if you will. And then it went into a warehouse. There was going to be a warehouse that was going to be there. And then that came before the planning board. And then I haven't seen anything move on that since. So there could be something in the works that just hasn't percolated up yet. But it could happen. And then we're also very fortunate about our project downtown. That's going to be wonderful to add to the community, the tax base, and with what's happening with, everybody knows this is Jeff Kinney's project in Plainville Square. So we're very excited about that. So that'll be a big boost to our town.
I think we've pretty much addressed anything. Everything? Is there anything we haven't addressed that you would like to add before people go to the polls?
No, I hope they can put their trust in me, and my counterpart who's running, Steve Albert, and the school committee, we're running for 2 spots, so we're not really running against each other, and keep the schools going in a forward, sustainable way. The planning board, I'm going to do everything I can to keep it going, and I just hope everybody pays attention to the fact that we have work to be done to get to not end up in a really bad financial position. We don't want to go back to where we were, and I'm running to try to avoid that at all costs.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Alex, let me begin by asking, why are you mounting a write-in campaign for Housing Authority?
So it's something I'd be really excited to serve my town. My wife and I, we've moved around to a couple different places recently, and the town of Plainville's just kind of really taken us. So it's something I've been interested in giving back to a community, and this community looks like one that I would love to be a part of.
Now, this would be a lot easier if your name were on the ballot. Why didn't you decide to run a few months ago?
I did. I wasn't all the way there yet. I am still relatively new to the community, so gathering the signatures needed to get on the ballot was something I couldn't come through with. I had talked to some people at the town, and they said that a write-in campaign for this position was worth it. So I figured rather than scrap it and try again next year, to take another go at it. So we'll see how it goes.
For people who are watching and don't know who you are you? Where are you from originally?
So I grew up in Halifax, down near Plymouth. I went to school at UMass Dartmouth. I got a degree in computational mathematics, so numbers are my specialty. My wife is Rachel. She's the best wife that anyone could ask for.
You're just trying to make brownie points now.
No, I'm just telling it like it is.
Children?
No children, not yet. That'll come sometime in the future, but...
How long have you been married?
We got married this past December.
Oh, wow. Newlyweds.
We'd been dating for 7 years. It's hard. I actually have to think about it sometimes because, time flies when you're having fun, as they say.
So what does she think about you being a politician all of a sudden?
She's been very supportive. That's part of why I said she's the best wife that any man could ask for. She's all in on it, whatever it takes. Whatever help that I may need. She loves talking me up, so she's been great.
You're making the men out there very jealous right now,
It sounds like
having a wife like that. So what do you do for work?
currently I do bookkeeping and accounting work for a landscape construction company. So we do a lot of big projects with a lot of big dollar ones. I do payroll, accounts receivable, accounts payable, so all of the managing of the books. And through my boss, I do feel like I get an indirect seat at the big table. I get a lot of input, so I feel like that's something that could serve me well in a position like this.
I will be the first to admit that I don't know a hell of a lot about the Plainville Housing Authority. What can you tell me about it? Because I'm sure there's other residents who don't know much about
I've
it.
seen that a lot, actually. I've seen when I posted some things online trying to drum up business for myself, so to speak. There's a lot of people that said we didn't even know we had one. A lot of it comes down to budget management, approving contracts. I've reviewed recent notes, recent minutes, and it's a lot of that. It's a lot of property management. But one of the big things is that it relies on somewhat on local tax money, but also federal tax money, which in times like these can be, subject to the current administration. So are we going to see tax cuts to that? We don't know. I always say there's nobody better at working within a budget than me. So.
Now, I know in North Attleboro, right next to the post office on South Washington Street, the Housing Authority has a senior complex there. They have a couple others in town. Are there similar facilities in Plainville?
I think they're a little bit smaller. There's not a lot of checks being written out, so I believe it is just the one. Some of this I would learn more once I'm in the position, but like I've always said, I'm very confident. If you hand me some books, I'll make it work for you.
Have you attended any meetings or watched them on TV?
I've attended a few meetings in Plainville. I've also attended some larger ones within Massachusetts. I went to Malden recently and saw Senator Ed Markey at his town hall. It was very interesting. Politics is something I'm kind of new to getting involved in, but it's something that's really taken off for me, and I like it because people think of it as unattainable, but it is real. These are real people. These are people representing you, your community. So it's something, like I said, I'd be excited to get more into it. So I hope that the people of Plainville will give me their vote of confidence.
The people you've spoken to, voters, in advance of the April 7th town election, when you mentioned that you're mounting a write-in campaign, what has the reaction been?
It's been mixed. I think a lot of people, again, because they don't really know it's a position, kind of understands that, small town politics, sometimes this is the way it works. I've had a couple of people that have kind of, folded their arms and said, give me the elevator pitch. And so I've had a few taglines like the one I used earlier, nobody's better at working within a budget than me. As I said, with my degree, I'm very good with numbers. I'm very pragmatic, logical. So I think things like that are what make me perfect for this.
You mentioned you've lived in a number of communities. How did you and your wife settle on Plainville?
A couple of reasons, because we did previously live in North Attleboro. We'd moved to Cumberland, Rhode Island, and most of the moving around was just playing the game of, where's the cheapest rent, because really that's what it comes down to. And that's kind of why I'm doing this, is because a lot of housing is a big issue. A lot of people are struggling with it. And in some ways, I have the luxury that I can move to wherever. But some of the rents out there, it's just hard, and that's why people need this. But we ended up, when we were in North Attleboro, we loved the area. We saw an apartment in Plainville, and my wife also, her grandfather did build a house in Plainville. They'd sold it a couple of years back after he died, so she felt very connected to the community, and she was somebody who was I want to live everywhere and anywhere. I want to move around. But then once we were here, she said, okay, that's it. I see this would be the place to set down.
What do you like most about Plainville?
It's a nice mix. It's very small townish, but it's also, growing up in Halifax, for anyone who knows what that town is like, it is also small townish, but it's way out of the way. It's 20 minutes away from the closest highway, which is in 3 different directions. It's nowhere near anything, so like Plainville gives you that. It's very small town, but you also have easy access to Boston, easy access to Providence, so you really get the best of both worlds.
Last thought, someone watching this, why should they write in your name?
Why should they write in my name?
Yes.
I'm somebody new. And
Give me the elevator pitch.
I think change is always good. I know a lot of people don't feel that way, but I think change is always good, especially with the younger generation coming up, because it's good to have people that get experience that can come in, and especially with politics, it's about passing the baton. And people are so, especially the previous generation, they don't want to pass the baton to someone inexperienced, which is totally fair. So my pitch to them is, let me be that next person to take it.
Bridging the gap.
Bridging the gap. That's a good way to put it.
You got another elevator pitch.
Excellent. I will definitely be using that.
Alex, best of luck on April 7th. As far as I know, you're the only write-in candidate that we're interviewing, so best of luck, and hopefully a nice 5-year term coming up.
Excellent. I hope so. Thank you so much for the time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please make sure you vote on April 7th. As I mentioned earlier, polls open at 7 a.m. and will close at 8 p.m. Voters in all precincts will cast ballots at the Public Safety Building at 194 South Street behind Town Hall. North TV's live election night coverage will begin at 8:15 Monday night, April 7th, right here on our Plainville channel, Comcast Channel 8. We'll also stream at plainville.northtv.net. We'll see you then.